Remember OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT? Yeah, that one. They gave us the AI chatbot that basically broke the internet in 2022. The one that made AI feel less like science fiction and more like, well, something you could actually use to write emails or help with homework. Well, last week, a bombshell investigation dropped about them. It's called the OpenAI files, and it's causing quite the stir in tech circles. The report comes from two nonprofit watchdog organizations, and it paints a pretty damning picture. We're talking about allegations that Sam Altman, OpenAI's CEO, has been deceptive about his business dealings, that the company has betrayed its founding mission, and that they've prioritized profits over the safety of potentially world-changing technology. If you've been paying attention to OpenAI at all, you know they've always positioned themselves as the good guys of AI. They started as a nonprofit with this noble mission: develop artificial intelligence that benefits all of humanity, not just the wealthy and powerful. They were supposed to be different from your typical Silicon Valley corporation. The OpenAI files argues that's all been a carefully constructed facade, that behind the scenes it's the same old story of ethical corners being cut, power being concentrated, and promises being broken in pursuit of massive profits. But here's the thing that's been eating at me. When I started actually checking these claims, digging into the sources, following the paper trail, verifying the documentation, something weird happened. The story started falling apart. Let me show you what I mean. The investigation opens with what seems like a smoking gun. Sam Altman supposedly lied in government filings for years, claiming to be chairman of Y Combinator when he never actually held that position. If you don't know Y Combinator, think of them as the Harvard of startup accelerators. They've helped launch companies like Dropbox, Airbnb, Reddit, and thousands of others. Claiming a fake position there would be like claiming to be a Harvard professor when you're actually a teaching assistant, the kind of lie that could destroy your reputation if it gets out. Sounds pretty damning, right? Except, when you dig into what actually happened, it looks less like intentional deception and more like bureaucratic chaos during a messy corporate transition. Here's the timeline. In 2019, Altman was trying to step back from running Y Combinator full-time so he could focus on OpenAI, but Y Combinator had big institutional investors who had committed money partly because of Altman's reputation and involvement. You can't just have your star player disappear without some kind of transition plan. So Altman proposed a compromise. He'd move from president to a less hands-on chairman role. Blog posts got drafted announcing the change. Legal paperwork got updated. From the outside, everything looked official and approved. Then, the deal fell apart. Internal politics, hurt feelings, competing priorities, whatever. The blog posts got quietly deleted, but those SEC filings? They'd already been submitted months earlier. Is this evidence of Sam Altman being a serial liar? Or is it what happens when billion-dollar organizations make decisions at startup speed and then have to clean up the paperwork mess when plans change? The OpenAI files wants you to believe it's the former, but the evidence points pretty clearly to the latter. Then there's what initially seemed like the most serious allegation, that Altman lied to Congress when he testified that he had no financial stake in OpenAI. The investigation claims he actually held indirect stakes through various investment funds, suggesting he was financially motivated to mislead lawmakers during crucial AI regulation hearings. This sounds like a major scandal until you understand how venture capital actually works. Altman's secret financial interest in OpenAI comes from his time as president of Y Combinator, which made an early investment in the company. As a YC partner, Altman would get a small slice of whatever returns that investment generates. But here's the math. Even if OpenAI hits its rumored $200 billion valuation, Altman's indirect stake through Y Combinator would be worth maybe $10 to $20 million. That sounds like a lot until you realize he owns 7.5% of Reddit, worth over $400 million, plus stakes in dozens of other companies. If Altman wanted to get rich from OpenAI, there are about 50 easier ways to do it than banking on a tiny piece of an early investment that might never pay out. It's like accusing someone of having a conflict of interest in promoting Ford because they own a single share of Ford stock in their retirement account. Technically true, but practically meaningless. But here's where the OpenAI files makes its most serious claim, that OpenAI illegally prevented employees from reporting safety concerns to federal regulators. If true, this isn't just corporate misconduct, it's a federal crime. We're talking about potential prison time, massive fines, congressional investigations, the works. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I went looking for evidence. I filed Freedom of Information Act requests with federal agencies. I searched regulatory databases for complaints. I looked for any sign that these alleged crimes were being investigated by law enforcement, and I found nothing. No formal whistleblower complaints, no regulatory investigations, no legal proceedings. What I did find was something completely different: a steady stream of former OpenAI employees speaking publicly about their concerns. Jan Leike, who used to run their AI safety team, openly criticized the company after leaving. Multiple researchers have published papers questioning whether AI development is moving too fast. Former executives have joined competitor companies and talked openly about industry-wide safety issues. If OpenAI was really suppressing whistleblowers and breaking federal law, this pattern wouldn't exist. You'd see lawsuits and regulatory investigations, not LinkedIn posts and research papers. The more likely explanation? OpenAI probably had some overly broad legal language in their employment contracts, the kind of boilerplate stuff that corporate lawyers love, and when someone pointed out it might conflict with whistleblower protections, they fixed it, which is exactly what Sam Altman said publicly when this issue first came up months ago. Of course, we can't talk about OpenAI controversy without addressing the elephant in the room. What happened in November 2023? If you missed it, here's the short version. OpenAI's board of directors fired Sam Altman with basically no warning. For 4 chaotic days, the most important AI company in the world was in complete meltdown. Employees threatened to quit. Microsoft, which had invested $13 billion, was reportedly preparing to hire Altman and most of OpenAI's staff. Then, just as suddenly as he'd been fired, Altman was back. New board, new governance structure, business as usual. The OpenAI files treats this as validation of their narrative. Look, they argue, even his own board couldn't trust him. But when you dig into what actually happened, the story becomes much more interesting. The board that fired Altman wasn't your typical corporate board focused on stock prices and quarterly earnings. It was dominated by AI safety researchers and academics who were genuinely worried about the pace of AI development. Their problem with Altman wasn't financial misconduct or legal violations. It was a fundamental philosophical disagreement about how fast artificial intelligence should be developed and how much risk is acceptable in pursuit of artificial general intelligence. This is actually one of the most fascinating debates happening in AI right now. Some very smart people think we should slow down AI development until we better understand the risks, that we're potentially creating technology that could be impossible to control once it becomes smarter than humans. Other equally smart people argue that slowing down just ensures that less safety-conscious actors, like authoritarian governments or reckless competitors, will develop AGI first, potentially with catastrophic results. Both positions are held by brilliant, well-intentioned people, but they're fundamentally incompatible worldviews about how to handle one of the most important technological developments in human history. The board crisis wasn't evidence of Sam Altman's moral failings. It was evidence of an unresolvable tension at the heart of OpenAI's mission. Here's something that really bothers me about the OpenAI files. Many of their most damaging sources are people who now work for OpenAI's direct competitors. The report heavily features Dario and Daniela Amodei, siblings who left OpenAI in 2021 to found Anthropic, now one of OpenAI's biggest rivals, backed by billions in funding from Google and Amazon. They describe Sam Altman's management style in pretty harsh terms, using phrases like gaslighting and psychological abuse. Look, workplace culture issues are real and serious. If these were their genuine experiences, they absolutely deserve to be heard and taken seriously. But when you're building an investigation, maybe don't make your star witnesses people who are now competing with your target for hundreds of billions of dollars in market value. It's like asking executives from Burger King and McDonald's to provide objective testimony about KFC's business practices. You might get some insights, but you're definitely not getting an unbiased perspective. The report's allegations about AI safety are particularly interesting because they mix legitimate concerns with misleading framing. Yes, OpenAI dissolved their super alignment team, the group specifically focused on controlling AI systems that might become smarter than humans. Yes, several prominent safety researchers left the company. Yes, there are ongoing debates throughout the industry about whether companies are prioritizing capability advancement over safety research. But the OpenAI files presents this as proof that OpenAI has completely abandoned safety for profits. The reality is more nuanced. OpenAI still publishes detailed safety assessments of their models, something most of their competitors don't do. They've developed safety techniques like constitutional AI and reinforcement learning from human feedback that the entire industry has adopted. They've been relatively transparent about their research compared to companies like Google or Meta. The picture that emerges isn't OpenAI stopped caring about safety. It's OpenAI is trying to balance safety concerns with intense competitive pressure, and reasonable people disagree about whether they're striking the right balance. That's a much more complex story than the OpenAI files wants to tell. It's also probably closer to the truth. Here's why all of this matters. We're living through one of the most important technological transitions in human history. The decisions being made right now about AI development will affect your job, your kids' education, national security, and potentially the long-term future of human civilization. Those decisions need to be made based on the best available evidence and the most thoughtful analysis we can manage. They can't be made based on information warfare and narrative manipulation designed to advance particular ideological agendas or commercial interests. The OpenAI files pushes us toward the latter. It treats incredibly complex technical and ethical questions as simple matters of good versus evil, heroes versus villains. But AI governance isn't a superhero movie. There are no clear good guys and bad guys, just people trying to navigate unprecedented challenges with incomplete information and competing values. So here's what I think we should be asking instead of, is Sam Altman secretly evil? How do we ensure that AI development happens as safely as possible, while maintaining the pace needed to stay ahead of less responsible actors? What kind of governance structures make sense for companies working on potentially transformative technologies? How do we balance transparency with competitive advantage and national security? These are hard questions without easy answers, but they're the questions that actually matter for our future. The OpenAI files doesn't help us answer any of them. Instead, it makes those conversations harder by poisoning the information environment with misleading claims and character attacks disguised as investigation. We deserve better than this. The future deserves better than this. Because when it comes to artificial intelligence, the stakes are too high for anything less than our most careful, honest, and rigorous thinking. And right now, we're not getting that. We're getting soap opera drama about Silicon Valley personalities when we should be having serious conversations about the future of human civilization. The OpenAI files is a symptom of how badly we're failing at this challenge. The question is, what are we going to do about it?